Um, so yeah, welcome to everybody and thank you for joining us today. I think Kim is going to also have a friend of hers dial in. What's his name? Donald?
Donald, he doesn't have, he's got a flip phone and he's a black man and he's been part of our lives forever. And, he's very big in the community. And we honor him every year. We have a float because he fought and he's a vet. And so he's just had a lot of experience too with death and dying. But he doesn't have Zoom. So I said, just try and call me. So I'm not sure if that can work, but,
Okay.
And then Darice is a client of mine. She's been a client for, I don't know, Darice, 10 years or something, maybe more. And we really want to hear her voice and kind of, today too.
Yeah. So, the past few weeks we've been kind of doing this a little bit more organically, and then just with everything going on yesterday, I called Kim and I was like, what are we gonna do? Like, I don't even know how to run this tomorrow. Let's but we agreed we definitely should do it. And Kim was sharing with me that she had been very inspired to write some music and some lyrics just about what she was hearing and seeing and experiencing. And I was pretty moved by that. So we definitely wanted to still get everybody together, talk about what is going on right now. So Kim, I'm not sure of the best way to kind of open it up. Do we want to just hear from people like we have in the past? What do you think? Or Darice, if you have a thought about it, totally open today.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you guys want to start, so whatever works for the two of you.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe let me just start initially. I don't really watch the news, and then when I saw the news, the images just in the very few minutes of watching it, it was really powerful and horrific because, here his neck is getting pressed down. And it was like he was being held like a prey, like, a deer or, it's like our throats, our spirit, our voice, and just kind of his voice being completely, squashed. And, and yesterday, I started to talk to his spirit and it's like, okay, what do you want? What do you want to say? Like, and I think this is what people need to do. They need to ask that question, what can we do? And because, just like everyone was kind of standing around, I think what's hard for us and what we have to look at is, in a situation, people had their videotapes, filming it, and people were screaming and wanting it to stop. But there has to be something more because, in something like that, how do we respond energetically? Like, are we afraid? Do we freeze? We may try to fight. But now we have to kind of stop a situation, and there is a part of us that, observes and looks at it, and because we don't know what to do. And that's kind of my question to the group too. When you've been in a situation where it's horrific, kind of, a survival situation, what do you do? And I think, we have to make a new agreement, and the agreement would be, we have to, even if it's police, we have to kind of, move through that line and, just try to break, free. It's easier said than done, but there's got to be an agreement. We're not going to be bystanders or just watching this done, that, and I think since we're all so kind of phone capturing stuff, we have to move into action. And so, I am asking, his last breath, kind of let that spirit move, kind of allow his breath to come through so we can be guided into what to do. And it may show up different than us. And I think too, this is where laws and things need to change. So with each individual, just even calling his name, this is where something can begin. And so I would love to hear from other people. And
Yeah, I
Darice,
would definitely, yeah, I would definitely agree that the laws need to change because, that's one of the frustrations. And I think a lot of people, especially white people, don't understand why people are protesting. They think, why can't you just do it more peacefully? But there's been a lot of work peacefully in the last 10, 15 years. There are a lot of groups, some associated with Black Lives Matter, some outside of it, that have been working with like communities, and police communities all over the country, trying to change this and like change the culture of policing that allows excessive force. But as a result of several Supreme Court decisions, that excessive force is actually legal. Like, as long as an officer can say they were afraid, it's not against the law for them to act that violently and even kill someone during an arrest. And so if they actually do get arrested, which is rare, I mean, that's been the progress in the last few years, that like at least now when these things are videotaped, they at least get arrested. But as soon as 5 years ago, like, they never got arrested, they never lost their jobs, they never lost their pension. Like, that's why people were so frustrated that all these Black and brown people were dying because of something going wrong during an arrest. And and police are trained to respond to stressful situations, but they're allowed to panic. It's legal for them to panic and kill somebody in that panic, whereas a Black or brown civilian can panic and it's your fault that you die. And white people panic when they get arrested, when a cop puts a gun in their face, and they don't die when they get arrested. They might get bruised, they might get beaten up a little bit, but they live during the encounter. And that's all we're asking. We just want to live during these encounters. Like, we don't want to be afraid every time a police questions us. Like, I always leave the house with my ID because I'm always worried a white neighbor or a cop is going to approach me and say, you don't belong in this white neighborhood. Like, I've done that my whole life. Like, I've had to worry about what I wear. I don't want anyone to think I might be gang affiliated. Like, that was a bigger concern when I was younger, but I still think about it even today. And like, you're raised with that fear and that anxiety, and like, how do you let that go? And yeah, and it's really frustrating. And so it just didn't come out of a vacuum. Like, people have been trying to do it the peaceful way for years, and every month there's like a horrible death, and they're always Black or brown, and it's just frustrating.
completely.
That thank you, Darice, for sharing that. It's really helpful. And it's so just for people that joined a couple minutes later, we put some really great resources in the chat window, some videos, book recommendations. But as you were talking, I had mentioned that I listened to a video that Trevor Noah put out this week about this. And I put that in the chat, and he said it really well too. He's just like, white people keep asking, well, why loot Target, or why loot, or what, whatever. And he's like, well, why not? Nothing else seems to be working. And it was just, and he frames up the whole thing. Watch the video, because I can't say it as well as he did, but he's like, we all walk around society thinking we're adhering to a social contract, but the social contract doesn't apply to Black and brown people.
That's right.
And so as the white people watch the looting happen and get distraught by it, he says, imagine that every day you turn on the TV, you're seeing that social contract be ripped up. The reason you're disturbed is because your social contract is being ripped up. But that's happening to us every day. And so what do we do? Not saying, not justifying or saying that's the answer or whatever, but just get the perspective. I thought that was really interesting.
I think too, it's like people that have money can buy things, and now we've been in. A lot of people haven't had jobs for a while. A lot of people, especially young people, and so I would probably. I mean, I may be out doing the same. It's like so. I get it. I mean, I get. The frustration, I think it's come to a boiling point too. We've all been in sheltered in place. And this just blew the lid off the top. And so, Yeah, so Darice, what kind of organizations have you been involved with, or I don't know, what has really influenced you, or what other things that, maybe white people can do? Because I think white people need to do something,
Mhm.
or how to support.
Yeah, well, like I had mentioned before, the book "Right for White Fragility," I hear that really helps. And I noticed the difference even among my white friends on Facebook who've read that book in the last few years. Like their understanding of race relations, has just gone to the next level. And like even just having this conversation where like white allies are actually finally asking, how can I help? Like it's not always on black or brown people to change racism in America. Like frankly, I never thought I'd see that shift in my lifetime. Like that's been amazing to see that happen in the last few years, that like more white people realize that like it's everyone's problem. We're all affected by structural racism in America, so that understanding is key. And I think the two resources I've really been listening to, two different podcasts, Pod Save the People. Um, they talk a lot about the work that they've been doing with police unions all around the country, like trying to transform this culture and working with other legal organizations to change the actual laws on the book so that this kind of violent behavior by bad police officers is actually illegal and that they can actually be prosecuted, for that excessive force. And then there's another podcast. I don't listen to it all the time because it's a little too intense emotionally, but The Breakdown by Shaun King, he covers a lot of that as well. So those would be the two main resources: Pod Save the People and The Breakdown by Shaun King.
If it's
Um,
okay, I had a question, if it was okay.
Go for it.
So, one of the things I've been really sensitive to in recent years is the exhaustion that people of color are feeling in having to explain this and to, help white people figure out what we should do, right? And so I'm in a place where I want to do the right thing. I want to act and not just be, like reacting on Facebook, right? Like I'm here to be an activist. Um, but I also recognize my own bias. Everybody's got bias as they've been raised. And so unwinding that, figuring out how, and then what is the appropriate thing to do. One of the things I heard about recently was this notion of, I don't really like the term, but they were calling it white caucuses, where it's a concept of like people assembling that want to make a difference, but removing the burden from people of color to have to do that, and to actually start with ourselves and examining where we have our own, prejudices. Even if we don't act upon them in a racist way, inherently we have them, and we know we have a privilege, we have a power. And, the thing that really struck me was the incident recently with Christian Cooper in the Central Park situation, where the white woman called, said, "I'm going to say an African American man is threatening me," right? And that the how quickly that came out of her. And there's a power and a privilege, especially I think white women even have even more so than white men in some cases, because we seem like we're victims at times. And I want to get past that. I want to unwind that inclination to feel threatened and things like that, or to use that power. And so I was curious, Darice, what you thought about the concept of, like, does it seem appropriate for white people to get together to try and figure out how we can be better allies and activists and change ourselves?
Oh, absolutely.
Or,
Yeah,
like,
I think
it feels weird, like we're exclusionary or something. And that's not the intent, right? The intent's completely the opposite.
it's good. I think white people should have safe spaces where they can really talk about the racist things they've been brought up with. And I think in an all white setting, you can be more honest about that, what you were exposed to early on, and actually really dismantle that, and to work to say, how is whiteness constructed in our culture. You know, I think white people do need to have those conversations, you
Yeah.
know, ask those questions.
Past that fragility, right? Because I think we're so embarrassed to say I'm a racist because that it carries this huge connotation to it. But it's like patriarchy. It has been internalized in us, whether or not we intend for it to come out or not. So,
Well, but that's how the privilege works.
yeah,
Like, if you're the benefactor of it, you're not supposed to see that you benefit from it.
yeah,
You know, so just being able to actually make it visible gives that less power. Like, just actually acknowledging it and talking about it is what dismantles white privilege. You know, and white people, you know, that is the next step, I think, in race relations in America, is for white people to take that on. Like you said, so Black and brown people shouldn't have to do it, you know, and we are exhausted. We're like super exhausted. And, you know, and the difference is, because it's a matter of survival, we get the opposite experience. We're raised to talk about race from like the time, like before we're like toddlers, you know, like you learn about it. Like, I started having conscious conversations about racism at the age of 5, you know, because that's what Black parents teach you, because it's how you survive.
right.
Like, you have to be aware of how it works and, like, you know, what's going on. And I was blessed to be raised by Black parents who taught me to, despite all of that, to be willing to take everybody as an individual, like actually get to know someone, whatever their race or ethnicity or religion is. Like, my mother taught me to like people until they did something wrong to me, you know, but like to give everyone a chance. And she basically told me that white people can't help being racist. Like, it's a sickness, like they were raised with. Like, that's how she framed it to me as a kid, you know, like they don't know they're sick, but they're kids, they're raised to be that way. You know, we can't do anything about it, but we can control what we respond to, and we can just do our best, you know.
It's time for us to take the medicine.
Time for us to choose the blue pill.
Yeah, exactly.
The Matrix.
So back to the resources conversation. This woman, Rachel Cargle, is the first link I put in the chat window. And as you were talking about, you know, how we're raised, what I was being reminded of is we've been taking on a diversity, equity, inclusion work at my nonprofit for the past couple of years. And I've learned a lot through that just by watching. I think there was a video by Robin DiAngelo. So I haven't read the book White Fragility, but I think there was a video that was shown to us, and this was maybe a year or so ago. And then we had a follow-up session on the Constitution of the United States and like defining white supremacy, because I think that my understanding of white supremacy previously was very different. And once I understood that it was actually like completely written into our Constitution, it's like we're raised that way because our country is centered around that. And I didn't realize that. Anyway, so this woman, so where I'm going with this is this woman, Rachel Cargle, has this series that I just subscribed to called The Great Unlearn. And I just subscribed this morning, so I don't know what I'm about to unlearn. But that also made me think of the New York Times 1619 series. Did you all listen to that?
I haven't yet, but I heard it was amazing.
It is so good. And so I think, you know, I'm going to assume that this Great Unlearn by Rachel Cargle has all of these elements, like the real history of the United States, not the one that's kind of that we've been taught.
Yeah.
Right. And so I just think so much of it is like, well, why were we raised this way? Oh, it's actually like woven into the fabric of our society. Right. So like your family aside, that's when we hear the word like structural racism, I'm just starting to learn like what structural actually means and how it manifests. And it's literally woven into every structure in our society. So I think, so part of it, back to what you're saying, Jen, is like part of it's action, right? And I think, so this was one other topic I was talking about with my husband. I said, one of the things that I learned is that it is a white supremacist way of being to to not want to listen, but just want to be in action. And I gotta go get it done. I gotta change the way I am. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, of course, that's exactly how I am. Like, I don't want to keep hearing about it. I just want to go do something about it. And so it's like unlearning that you don't always have to be in action. Sometimes you just gotta listen. And yes, you do need to be in action too, but like there's a lot of listening that needs to happen.
Absolutely.
And we have to value that. And it's hard. Like, because, you know, like you were saying, Darice, like we can't imagine how exhausted you must feel, you know what I mean? And this whole concept of white fragility is like, if we turn on the TV and we feel exhausted by that, that's white fragility, right?
Mhm.
Like we have the privilege of saying we get to, oh, this is so exhausting for me. It's like, well, what's it like every minute of every day for your whole life?
Yeah.
We have no concept.
Yeah. And Val, to your point, you know, one of the biggest things that I've heard is, you know, we've had the microphone for a long time. It's time for people to sit down and shut up and listen. And I do think, you know, everybody is on their own journey in trying to listen and understand. And so, you know, everyone will be ready for that, you know, to lock arms, so to speak, and defend and assert what needs to happen at a different time. But it is important to, you know, it's funny because from a science perspective, like I have a background in user experience. It's like empathy and listening are a huge part of user experience because you don't know what people are going through. You're only going to learn that by listening. And so that's, you know, the introspection and listening are absolutely, I think, the first step. And I feel hesitant a lot of times in these times to say something because I feel like I've had the microphone for too long. And I want to just rather amplify the voices that need to be heard.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And, you know, I, talking about growing up, I grew up in the beginning of my life in Richmond, which is in the ghetto. And I didn't have any white friends. My friends were Black or Mexican. And so my dad, he's Mexican and Black and also, you know, Italian. But it was, you know, growing up, you know, they would still, the white supremacists would still burn crosses on the yards of the Black people in our neighborhood. And this happened in my lifetime. You know, it seems like that couldn't have been. And even, you know, in high school, when I went out with a Mexican, there was a target put on my life and I had to be escorted to my classes. And then I didn't have any friends because of, you know, the white gangs. So, you know, it's kind of like even, and I'm like, don't look Black, you know, it's not like I'm fully brown, but, you know, growing up kind of in that environment early on, or being from Montalban and Parchester, where we are from, moving then into Pinole, where it was a target, anyone from that neighborhood, it's kind of like, you know, my brother got almost killed because, you know, he was jumped because of being from that neighborhood. And so it, you know, just having that little experience, you know, that really impacted my life. Just, I can't imagine having that every single day, like for you, Darice, you know, it's because then later in life, you know, people think, you know, I'm privileged or white, or, you know, I live in a certain area. And I remember going to graduate school. I went to undergraduate at New College, and it was very diverse. And then they thought I was some rich white woman. I'm like, wait a minute, you don't know where I come from. So, but, you know, I think poverty has a real, you know, big part of it. You know, when you are really raised poor and you know, you don't really have the access to education, and it's very hard to create change. And it took me years and years and years and years to even, you know, go to college just because, you know, of that poverty. And so it's, Yeah, but I'll never forget the burning crosses on the yards, and that's in my lifetime.
Oh yeah, that happened in Maryland too in like the 80s, you know. It wasn't in like the suburbs, but like further like the more rural areas, but there would be cross burnings on like black people's houses, and like synagogues would have cross burnings. Like Klan was very active, and this was like the 80s. Like it was crazy.
It was the 80s. That's right. I think too, you know, looking at, you know, everything that is going on, and because, you know, the Door to Divinity is talking about lives that have been lost, and, you know, and his spirit is definitely not going anywhere until some things get right. And so this is where you know, his voice, actually, and the spirit of him is very much alive, and we can, you know, tap into and communicate, you know, with these spirits that have passed, that want justice in a way, and we can be their voice. So I think that communication about, okay, you know, what can we do?
Let me ask you a question on that, Kim, and I don't know if it's an answerable question, but you know, we've been talking the past couple sessions about going through the door, going up to the door, being able to go through the door and come back. You shared a story about somebody who was in a coma that went through the door, then came back into their body and survived. Where does a spirit go that hasn't gone through the door? Can you get into that?
They are around us. It's very interesting, because even yesterday I was looking at a client, and I'm like, I could see that her boyfriend's father, dead father, was inside of her. She goes, my body feels so weird. I don't know what's wrong, you know? And I'm like, well, he wants to be reborn. And I could see that that's what was happening, you know? So spirits hang around, you know, and they get stuck. And so the real goal is to have, you know, a relationship like with me and you. It's the same thing with a spirit. But when we get attached, or they get attached, then we start getting stuck, and it creates a lot of problems. So actually, because, you know, I was working with George, you know, just even kind of helping go into new fields of information, because spirits can help us tremendously, because they're not limited by the body, and we are. And, you know, we can ask for something new to come in and something new to come through. And by doing that, then we'll start to see it even the next day. So it's kind of like we have an army kind of angels, or just even of guides. And, you know, but we have to be in this communication. Otherwise, without that communication, spirits get stuck because they're in pain. And, you know, it's kind of like, you know, there's just this image of him, you know, being pressed into our foundation, is kind of even in the lyrics, you know, so we can create a new nation. I mean, he became our foundation, and it is a foundation we've got to change, you know, so we can be new. And so, you know, like symbolically, just everything we kind of looked at, you know, he was a sacrifice. And, you know, to really ignite change, not that we had to have that sacrifice, but, you know, yeah.
You know, well, I guess one of my questions is, does it feel different now to you, Darice? Or I mean, you mentioned some differences you've observed in, you know, over time, but like, does this particular moment this week feel different to you or not?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I guess part of it is that, you know, I mean, I've been hearing these kind of stories for years now. Like every month, there's always at least 2 or 3, you know, like in the Black community, we hear, I mean, there's like a laundry list of names. Like, I mean, what's scary to me is that, like, on some level, I'm sad, but I'm not as profoundly sad as I know I probably should be, because if I really felt all that, like, I wouldn't get out of bed. Like, I wouldn't be able to do anything.
Yeah.
Like, if I really mourned all of these deaths, like, because there's always at least 3 a month, like, and it's been that way, like, for years. Like, I have to detach and be sensitized, or else I can't function, you know? Like one of my friends on Facebook, you know, she's white and she's been crying about George Floyd for like weeks, and like part of me is like, gosh, I wish I could cry like that over him, but like I can't. Like,
Yes.
you know, it's too much for me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think maybe after this week, maybe things will change. You know, I hope it changes for the better. You know,
Yeah,
that
I
maybe
mean,
these
it's just,
protests will make that happen.
yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. It's really helpful to hear your perspective. It's like, no, it's not any different. It's been, you know. So I just wonder why it feels different why does it feel different for us? Or maybe is it just me? Does anybody
Or maybe because the protest, you know, I mean, this is the first time it's been nationwide protest, you know. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this, I guess, maybe since Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown.
And Watts, I think it was nationwide, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's the nationwide aspect, I guess.
Yeah.
I think Val, part of it is, I think part of it is the other things that are happening while this is happening, the pandemic, and, you know, people feeling like, seeing how the contrast, there's this stark contrast that we're seeing between armed white men going to the Michigan state courthouse and nothing happening to them as they scream in the faces of law enforcement.
Right.
And the contrast then immediately of how we're seeing people of color being treated and harmed and killed. It's just so, it's this in your face. Like, if you have any sort of empathy, if you have any sort of logic in you,
Yeah.
you see how just drastically different the experiences are.
Yeah.
And how people of color can't walk out down the street without, you know, and it's interesting because I've read some stuff where, you know, a Black man was like, I feel scared putting a mask on during the pandemic.
Oh, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and I get it. Right. Because who normally has to wear a mask is somebody that's going to cause you harm. Now we're all wearing masks. Right. And so I think that that's part of it. And I think also it's getting to this boiling point where now we've been privileged as white people, especially people who, you know, aren't in poverty situations and things like that, to be silent. We've had that privilege to just be bystanders. And I think it's getting to the point now where we're finally feeling that existential, universal, cosmic pain of our planet, of our universe, and we can't be silent anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't be bystanders either.
We can't be bystanders. I think that's probably a better way. And that's, again, not to say like, oh, I need to go talk and have the microphone all the time, but like, it's gotten to the point where if I see something happening around me, I will call out the injustice, or, you know, like, you've got to lock arms. You've got to start standing up because we have the privilege to stand up.
Yeah, I think too, you know, people even thought, okay, I've got you on film, you're going to stop, you know, to the cop, you're going to stop. I've got you on film, but it didn't stop him. It was like a fucking demon looking out, just like igniting kind of this fight. And that's where, you know, it's like terrorism in a way. We've got to physically, even like charge it, you know, and physically do something, you know.
I mean, I don't like relishing in violence at all.
No.
But there was, if you guys saw, there was a guy with one of those, like, you know, serious bow and arrows that came out to a protest and was trying to start shooting people with this bow and arrow. And the crowd of actually mostly white people came in and beat this guy up very badly to stop him from doing what he was doing. And that, it's like, I don't want to see any of that. But when somebody shows up like that, to see the solidarity to take that down and knowing that it's wrong and not just ignoring it, you know, and being afraid of it or running for yourself, like, these are some of the things we're going to have to do, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think too, it just, it really reflects, just because even in this past week, I look at energy, I look at what's going on in people, and some of my clients, they look energetically good. They got a lot of gold things, great. But this week it was like I was just looking at all kinds of horrific stuff, and there is energetically, if we are not grounded, if we go into fear and lose our ground, something comes in, and it just reminds us that we've got to stay grounded in every situation, because if we pull up, and start engaging and kind of, the demon, it will come into us, and none of us are immune. And so, we just got to really keep grounded in this time.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we just need to continue to, not just be grounded, but then, ensure that we're just protecting our own energy, that we're not getting involved in other people's energy. I mean, this power of the crowd to, whether it's a crowd that's real live on the street or a crowd in social media or whatever that you get influenced by, right? I mean, we know what's right and wrong. And it does feel like that, especially right now, there's so many people that are just getting influenced that are not grounded. I mean, there's so many people that are not grounded because of what's going on with the pandemic or economically or whatever. And when you're not grounded, it's so easy to look outside for answers, right? So.
Yeah, and it's just a good reminder to go within your center, within your heart, and to go vertical, to connect to source, to connect to the planet. And because anything else, it's just, I'm sure everyone has an experience of maybe things that have been coming up this week or this past week, where what you think is, and people all of a sudden change, even if you've known them for a long time. So.
Well, you had an experience.
Yeah,
I think actually, can you, this is going to seem a little off topic, but we did talk about your book, Kim, in previous sessions. So maybe can you just give an update on that?
Yeah, so, I got the contract back for the book, and it was very interesting because I had a lawyer look at it, and he's like, you absolutely cannot sign this. It's like, it pretty much said, if there's anything wrong, I need to go to Singapore, to the courts there. And this is where caning was just happening not long ago, and women have no rights. And here this contract is with a businessman who is the co-author of this book and was a client for a long time, helping him through a process. And then we wrote this book. And then all this claiming of information that is his intellectual property when it's been my life's work. And so it was just like, it's kind of like, I don't even really know if he realizes that. So it's, people, when they get ungrounded, they get overtaken. And I know that, to be, and that's why doing the tools is so important, keeping inward, because people can change, and then something comes in, and then it's like, it's what it was is this lack of support. And this is what you were saying, Darice, that your community fully needs to be supported, fully needs to be held, because here I'm trying to stand up for myself in this, when I'm realizing that, wait, why am I trying to fight when this is even the information I come in with? Like, I'm trying to now hold on to it or fight for it or claim it. Yes. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to have to drop it. Something I worked 2 years on, I'm going to have to let this go. I'm not sure what's going to happen with it, but unless people get into a very clear agreement, like, okay, this is collaborative, this is shared, this is, here's the information I came in with, here's what we did together. And, things get distorted You know, and what I see, especially in the Black community, there's the voice, there's the creativity, there's raw energy. And, you know, think about everything that's been stolen in a way too, and made money off of from music and all kinds of things. So, you know, I think we have to be fully out of agreement with people that cannot be, you know, really good in a sense, really honorable. Really what I teach, and you know, so anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
can I give my version of that?
Yeah.
How I experienced it when you were sharing it with me. So Kim co-authored a book with a guy that was a client for a very long time, and a number of calls ago, I was encouraging everybody to buy her book. And over the course of the past number of weeks, like just came to light that he had very different intentions than how you opened this process to begin with. And now where that's left you is that, you know, this is no longer a collaboration. And I'd say the good news is that you figured that out now.
Yeah.
Before the book went out, right? So now, Kim and I were just talking yesterday about, you know, what was your intention for the book and what did you want to have happen? And that can still happen in the world. It doesn't need to be with him. It could be alone. It could be with a different collaborator. But the information can get out there. And I think the connection that you're making to the Black community or brown communities is that, you know, there's a lot of thieves out there, energy thieves, talent thieves, intellectual property thieves. And again, about just being aware of your own space, your own energy, and who you're in relationship and in agreement with. And if and when they change because of who knows what, being willing to end that agreement and being able to end that agreement, even though, you know, you put in 2 years of work, right? It's like, at least that agreement is ended now, right?
Yes.
Anyway, I wanted to follow up because we've been talking about it, and I hope that was okay, Kim.
Yeah. No. Oh, yeah. Definitely. And Darice, were you going to say something?
yeah, I was going to say, sorry that happened to you. My God. So
Well, I have to,
disappointing. Wow.
people who bought the book, I got to let you, you know, I'll be doing sessions for you. But I have to, you know, it's not fully closed, so we got to
I'm
figure it out.
disappointed. I mean, hopefully you'll be able to get a new agreement and still get the book out, because I was really hoping to get the book. So.
Well, and if those who don't know, Darice is an amazing writer, and she is a screenwriter, and she's going to be moving to LA, and she has amazing stories. And so, you know, these are important stories to be heard. And, you know, she has an incredible background. You know, can I say this, Darice?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah. She was raised by, you know, her parents, but they had 50 foster kids moving.
Not at the same time.
Not at the same time, but this, you know.
How many?
About 50, but you know, it was like from the time I was a toddler till I was 10. So like some would come for
50.
Yeah. But some would come for like a couple days, some would come for like 3 or 4 weeks. A handful stayed for like a year to 2 years. You know, on average, they stayed for like 3 to 6 months. You know, some would come for a couple months, come back a year later for a month. Some I never saw again after one visit. Several came back on a regular basis over like 5, 6 years, that kind of thing. Yeah, depending on what was going on with their birth families.
Wow.
So I think, you know, like you were saying, Darice, as a Black woman, or, you know, as a person of color, or, you know, brown, it's very hard to be seen, right? And
Yeah.
when you grow up with not being really seen, and, you know, even growing up in a family where you have all these kids, where your parents really can't see you, it's hard to activate, you know. And so I think it's important, everyone, even on this call, they see you. They see you as a creator, you as a storyteller, you as this powerful woman that's going to be in Hollywood, you know, creating story for, you know, this new time. And just being seen and being activated in that way can change everything. And so, you know, I hope you and other people of color really receive our intention of being seen, and that your voices, us supporting those voices or whatever we can do to support those voices. That's this song I wrote. It's like, my intention is, a Black man, a rapper, sing this, like us supporting those voices of people that need to be, take the stage,
Okay. Well, I also had a weird encounter. Actually, just happened right before the call. I had been flirting with this guy in California. We work together, but we've never actually met face to face because our whole company is virtual. So he's in California, but we've seen each other on video conferences, so we know what we each look like. And but the last 2 months, we've been having these like intense, flirty conversations for like an hour, 2 hours at a time, a couple times a week for like 2 months. Today, he told me he reconnected with this woman he met like 10 months ago, and like they're gonna try to make a go of it. Like she lives in another state, like Chicago, I think, and they might eventually move to Florida together now or something if things work out. Like they talked for like 8 hours yesterday apparently, and so like that's not happening now. Like I was planning on maybe trying to meet with him face to face in July, so I'd called or float that idea by him today, and that's when he told me all about this. And so at this point, we're probably not even going to be like platonic friends, because it would be weird. There's just too much chemistry on the phone. Like I'd feel like the other woman, so I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. But I mean, it'll still be fine because we work together, but it's not like we work that closely together. But like, it's just, that was like out of nowhere. I'm like, wow, eclipse season is no joke.
Well, and this is kind of about stealing in a way. It's kind of like people, a lot of times I see, and I can't tell you how people, engage, and they get attention and it fills them. And then they go off and create other things. And then here you are left with, being kind of stolen from. And, and that's right, what you said about eclipse season, because really what we're looking at here, it's like Martin Luther King. It's the past, all the past. And think about it, it's like with especially the Gemini, which is connected with voice, speaking, communication, and all these images that are connected, to Floyd, and lack of communication, cut off, pressed down, held like prey. And it's just like a repeat of the past, just old pictures coming up for us to clear and us to let go of. So it's that retrograde, yet another time looking at it kind of in a new way. And I think it's so important because, for people that, it's always kind of been a part of your life, the pain just gets reactivated. And like you say, I've got to desensitize. And, for some people or white people, maybe it's like the first time. And, but, we need to purge this. We need to release this. We need to let this go and really drop it out of our bodies so that we can, and that's what I experienced, even with this book thing. Here, I'm like, all right, Mother Earth, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to create space. And, I could feel even 2 years of work, I'm like, all right, I'm letting it go. I'm creating space and something new is coming through. And so it's really important, and it's very hard to do. But having space allows us to then look at what's going on in a new way. So, okay, what possibilities, what can we do here to move and to change? And even for you, even with this guy, it's like, all right, unless, somebody's going to show up and get him out of your space, drop him. I had a client this week.
Nice.
I had a client this week. She was on the phone. She had these weights and she had some issue happen. And I'm like, all right, like really dropping. She's like with the weights. And she kept doing it until I could see that everything was out of her. And so on a body level, it's kind of like we need to get it out because people in society are getting out it on, they're creating karma. They're getting it out, the energy out. But if we can give it to Mother Earth and move it down, now we're open for, the right person, because it's good, like me. The book didn't wear out, this guy didn't wear out, not the right people. We need to be with the right people.
Yes to that.
Yeah, definitely yes to that. When we were talking, Kim and I were talking yesterday, she's like, it should be easy. And I agree. I'm like, if you're in a relationship that is a struggle, it just shouldn't be that much of a struggle. There are people you can surround yourself with that it doesn't have to be a fight. It doesn't have to be a struggle. It doesn't have to be hard. I believe that anyway. I mean, you can't choose, you can't choose everybody, right, that you surround yourself with, but you can choose the people that you invite in really closely and you let affect you, right? All right, we have 4 minutes left. This is a super different session than last ones we've been doing. But I really appreciate all the information. And if anybody, I see that Jen had to drop, but she put something in here in the chat window that she said she's been using to guide her to different resources. And it's a Black Lives Matters site. I clicked on the link and it appears to have a lot of actions and suggestions of what you can do. So
Hey,
before we
Val,
close, yeah.
would you mind sending out those links? Because I think because I joined a few minutes late, like they didn't appear in the chat. So.
Oh,
I think if you click on your screen and you click on chat, do you have that on your screen?
Yeah, I see the Pod Save the People and the podcast, the Shaun King thing, but I don't see the ones prior to that. So.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me just see if I can put these back in here.
Darice, what do you think of that term, Black Lives Matter?
I've always been fine with it. I mean, it makes sense to me since, for so long, that's how Black and brown people felt, like our lives didn't matter as much as white people's lives. So,
yeah.
Can you see it now, Jen?
I just see a bunch more stuff. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah,
we should copy all that. And
but yeah, I think not a bad idea to include this as a follow-up. So let me just capture this.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
Than's for joining us. Was there any?
Thank you.
I'm curious what inspired you to join today, Jen?
Well, I've wanted to come the other weeks as well, but I just haven't been able to make it happen. But I really worked hard to come today because this is really important to me, and I feel a calling to, like, I've been sitting on the sidelines trying to educate myself and to listen for a long time, and I feel like I'm ready to take a more active role. And so, I'm just, but it can be scary because I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to do the wrong thing. And so that can be tough because like I said, the intention's good, but I don't always act impeccably because I'm stupid and privileged and, like have this, white supremacist kind of background inherent. So,
Yeah, Madonna got really slammed.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, she got really slammed. Did you see that, Darice?
I remember hearing about it vaguely.
Yeah, her son danced a Michael Jackson song. He's Black. And, the response, was not good. Like, that's going to make it better, a dance.
Right. Yeah. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I think when it comes to conversations around race, that, that we all have the potential to say something offensive and not mean it, and I think it's always good to just, say ahead of time, that if it happens, just feel free to say, hey, that hurt my feelings and here's why, and, be willing to listen. And on both sides, Black and white, I think we both need to do that in these conversations and say, hey, you have to let me know how that landed for you. And if I hurt your feelings, I'll apologize, and, we can still have an honest conversation about it, like it's bound to happen.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Darice, for that.
Joining us today and entertaining this conversation.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me a space to process some of this stuff because I hadn't had a chance to do that really yet. So.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And your voice is, can't wait to see all your creations.
Yeah.
Excited to hear
She's doing so great with all of her writing.
I'm excited to hear more about what you're creating for sure.
Yeah. Me too. Hopefully it'll come out. I mean, I'm not writing about any of this stuff right now. Right now I'm writing a story about the Virgin Mary, but that should be cool. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But I think people are going to need healing, so hopefully
Yeah.
this will come out in like a year or so. So I think we're going to need a message of hope. So
Yeah, that's great.
Great. Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Hey, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Bye.
You too. Bye.